Susan Stubson received a Bachelor of Music degree in piano performance from the University of Colorado Boulder, during which time she won the prestigious Fisk competition an unprecedented 4 times in a row. Susan also received a Master's of Music degree in Performance and Literature from the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York. In 2011, she was appointed by Governor Matt Mead to the Wyoming Cultural Trust Fund, where she now serves as chairman. A strong voice for the arts, Susan is a frequent contributor to the Writers from Wyoming series, as well as a speaker on issues of women in leadership, as well as arts advocacy. When she's not practicing piano, Susan practices law at Crowley Fleck PLLP. She's married to Tim Stubson. They have 2 boys, Huck and Finn, and a cow dog, Lily Roosevelt. Sponsored by Hilltop Bank, please welcome Susan Stubson now with Identity, Fact or Friction?
When I learned I was going to speak on the issue of identity, my husband Tim commented, I'm sure without thinking, "So who will you be that night?" It's a fair question. Attorney, pianist, board member. Those describe some of me, certainly. Those are pieces of me, but that's not the whole part. We live in a time where fact is fiction and fiction sometimes becomes truth. So therefore, our identity is the nexus between who we are and who we'd like others to think we are. Together it forms an equation. I'm not a mathematician, but an equation of fact plus fiction equals what I call friction, like stars crashing or colliding against one another uncomfortably. If we're lucky, there might be a moment of truth in there someplace, so what do you call that? Truth? Truthy? Truthy-ish? Is it a lie? So here's all the ways that I've used to identify myself publicly. And this is just in the past 6 months. Who knows, a year, it could be totally different. So there's some fact in there, definitely. There's a lot of exaggeration, some aspiration, some things that I'd like you to think I really am. So here's who I am. There's me and my sweet boys. There's me as a mama. There's me and my boring yawner, lady lawyer mugshot. And then there's me as a pianist. Those are all pieces of me. This is my truth. These are who I am. Now, on the next slide, I will show you who I would like you to think I am. There's me, of course, as Mrs. Brady. Pause for a second. There's the good wife, political spouse, insightful, super smart lawyer, and then my favorite, me as Beyonce with a pink piano on fire. That's my friction. So if the events of this past year have taught us anything, it's that we can say what we want without any real basis in fact, and people will roundly accept the fiction we create. It's the way a billionaire businessman became the voice of the commoner, creating a narrative of what some wanted to hear and some desperately wanted to believe. So this friction thing is not a new thing. Take a look at this portrait of an 80-year-old Winston Churchill. At this point, Churchill was on his second go-round as prime minister, having conquered evil writ large, and was currently at work teaching a 28-year-old newly crowned Elizabeth how to be queen. He was, by general consensus, larger than life, which is how I think Sutherland wanted to portray him. Churchill disagreed, calling the portrait filthy and malignant. So if Bradley Cooper were alive in 1954, perhaps Churchill would have preferred to have viewed himself this way. The ability to see how we are, how we view ourselves, is that friction between honesty, insecurity, confidence, clarity, candor. So Mr. Churchill, he's clearly not alone in this identity crisis, if you would like to call it that. So if you take a look at any self-respecting Roman emperor, you see this stew of ego, pride, arrogance, ambition wrapped into one pectoral popping dragon slain granite bust. This is what he was probably thinking inside, right? Oh dear God, no, what have I done? So I'm comforted. I'm comforted that if these heavies can't figure out who they are, how can I? How can we figure out what our identity? I'm comforted by the fact I don't need to fudge who I really am, which is I'm a working mom who feels I never get the balance right. I'm concerned there's not enough women voices in the public dialogue. I'm a feminist who feels what's best for our children is for their mothers to stay at home. My responsibility is to my faith, my family, my profession, my community. I think there should be no hierarchy of faith or race, that we are a country inclusive of all. I'm a Republican concerned with climate change. I cling to my religion, but not to my gun. I believe we are all created in His image and we don't get to choose our sexuality. I'm concerned for the least among us. I believe that we, the richest people on earth, the ones who own houses for our cars, we, this nation of immigrants, have an obligation to take care of the sick, the poor, the displaced, and those seeking refuge. So what do you do with that? Holy smokes, what a mess. Is it fair to distill the stew of who we are into one word? A party affiliation? A slogan? A word? So we'll see in the next series of slides how some artists portray their private frictions, how they struggle with their frictions. So judging by this, I think it's safe to say we are all a happy mess of contradictions. So I'll close by telling a story. This is a night of storytelling. Recently, I was headed back to Casper after a long day's work. I was grumpy, I was tired, I was missing my Tim, I was missing my sweet boys. I wanted to be home. So the night before, my son and I had had a row, and I was the worse for wear, having taken the role of the child in that battle, hurling mean, remarkably hurtful untruths at him. Definitely not Mrs. Brady, not Mother of the Year. He took the high road and just simply had walked out. So as I was driving across the high plains, with more than a couple of hours yet to go, in that quiet night, I was replaying this argument, longing for a redo, chewing on issues of the day, thinking ahead to tomorrow, thoughts ranging from the ordinary to the extra. And in the stillness of the air, a falling star dropped directly in my line of sight. It was as if God had dropped a plump line of mercury from the heavens to the floor, a gift reserved solely from Him to me. The pleasure and peace I experienced in that moment was profound. For some reason, it seemed to encompass all that I am and all that I wanted to be. And as it burned and flamed out, I thought to myself, we have such precious time on this fine earth. So this is where my narrative begins. Make it big, make it bold, make it larger than life, but make it me. And that is no lie. Thank you.